Hi, Sarah. How's it going?
Hey, how are you? I'm
I'm
excited.
good. We got an intro now.
Yeah, I'm excited because I get my new car today.
Woo-hoo.
Car, just in debt forever.
Yep.
Make something a bit bigger. So, yes, get that
Yeah.
today. And I have frisbee trial next weekend. So I'm very excited. I'm working very,
That's exciting.
yeah, I'm doing a
I
new,
just,
doing a new disc freestyle routine. So I'm working hard on that.
ooh, exciting. Yeah, I just got back from the Tillamook tournament. You see my t-shirt?
Nice.
Powered by cheese. If you don't know, Tillamook is famously known for its cheese production as a small coastal town in Oregon. Had a great tournament, camped, stayed on the coast for Labor Day weekend, and still recovering. It's been 4 days and I'm still recovering.
Yeah.
It was a big tournament. We had a lot of teams, but we did very well.
Yeah. This thing I'm going to is the Pacific Northwest Regionals. So it's
Ooh.
like days and it's going to be super busy. I have like no expectations to win anything because it's like only my third trial, but it's
Mhm.
localish. So I was like, I'm going. I entered everything. I entered the freestyles. So we're going to go have fun.
Hell yeah.
We're going to cost.
I think that's the best way to do any tournament is just to go in and have fun. No expectations.
I mean,
It's always just about the learning experience,
a water glass because the kitten was probably going to knock it down.
of
Um,
course.
I mean, that's how I do dog sports is I'm like, I'm here to do stuff with my dog. I'm like, competing against myself. Like the reason I like to trial is because it gives me an incentive to like actually practice, right? So
Same. That's why I'm on flyball because it's a team sport and it is that social pressure to show up for your team. I'll practice the other stuff, but I don't normally trial. Like I don't trial barn hunt or any of that stuff. But yeah.
So speaking of dog sports, I'm gonna
Yeah.
listen to our
It's a
talk.
good segue.
Yes, so we have been talking about like breed groups and genetic tendencies, like kind of how the predatory sequence was modified for like each of those breed groups. So what we're
Yep.
going to talk about today is kind of work into that genetic tendencies concept a little bit more. And we're going to talk about like how genetic drives influence the behavior a little bit more, and like if you have a dog who's kind of showing these issues, how do you deal with and then we're kind of going to go into some details on that, and we'll see how much we can get done for this episode.
Awesome. So we've already gone through all of the classes.
Yeah.
Let's just we've talked a lot about the predatory sequence. So let's talk a little bit about how those genetic drives can influence behavior in a more generalized way.
And we did kind of bring that up as we went through the breed groups. So we're just going to kind of review that today and like kind of think of what we see the most commonly. So I'm just going to kind of list a few things that like I can think of that I would get complaints of. So
Yes.
definitely one is like livestock guarding dogs that are in an urban environment that are barking because
Yep.
this genetically bred into them to patrol the perimeter and bark if there are threats. And normally they're doing that job on a huge acreage. So when you put them in a 50 by 50 lot, it can become problematic quite quickly. Herding breeds, on leash overstimulation, reactivity to movement.
Movement is a big one. Yeah.
So like just kind of that getting that sensory overload and being reactive. Terriers and some of our northern breeds can have prey drive to small animals. A lot of our scent hounds can have issues with running away because they catch a scent. Um,
Yep.
Anything you want to add? I mean, there's definitely lots, but we did cover.
There's lots. I mean, just going with the scent hounds having struggling with recall and staying present, things like sight hounds and huskies. So those kind of breeds tend to fall in that category too. So terriers are more prey drive, sight hounds and scent hounds are more like you have issues with recall, and then yeah, the things like German shepherds and those sort of like you mentioned territorial breeds. So
Yeah,
all I get similar calls, I get similar phone calls for the same behavior. Like my
yeah,
dog won't stop barking, my dog won't leave squirrels alone. So
right. So we want to talk about like how if you have a dog who's kind of like displaying these genetic issues, you're generally in a bit of a like square peg in a round hole situation, because we developed those drives so that the dogs could do jobs, and then we're taking them away from those jobs and being like, okay, you have to be a pet. We're going to take on leash walks around the neighborhood 3 times a day, and you're going to be satisfied with that, and it just doesn't.
mm, no.
So we're going to talk about how to work with some of these genetic drives in dogs. And spoiler alert, it's generally not going to be obedience training.
No.
Going to be through surrogate activities and fulfilling your dog's needs.
Yes.
So,
Surrogate activities is a
yeah,
great way of putting that. And what I often tell clients, just because you made me think of it, I want to throw this in here. Obedience does not solve behavior problems.
yeah.
Obedience is a management tool, at least in my opinion as a professional. I use obedience as a management tool and then as just a way to like work the dog's brain a little bit in the beginning, but it does not solve behavior problems.
Yeah, the only time where it kind of does is like if you have a dog that like maybe struggles with arousal or like some of those territorial issues, you really do have to work on getting the dog to be able to respond to cues under high arousal, because that's going to be your management, right? Like Will is
Yes.
territorial, and I've worked really hard to make sure that she's responsive to, basics like come and sit and stay, even when she's amped. And that way, if she's feeling a little bit uppity about like somebody walking by or somebody coming in the house, I can put her on stay and she will defer to that. Otherwise,
Right.
it would be not a good situation. So that's kind of,
Exactly. Same. I use it as a sort of way to build the brain in arousal. Again, that's a management technique though, and it has to be worked on. Because like for example, my dog has high prey drive, so his wants are to chase a squirrel. His instinct is never gonna change, but I can get him to recall and heal even if the squirrel is around. It takes a lot of work to get to that point, but it's management over his instincts more than anything else.
and so when we're talking about a lot of this stuff that's got a genetic basis, you can't train it out, right? You can train alternative behaviors like we were just talking about, but that desire is always going to be there. And it's really, really hard to train alternative behaviors if you're not giving the animal an outlet for that joy.
Yes.
So we can do a lot of that through games and play and sports. You don't have to play sports professionally, but a lot of sports are really fun to get involved with. You're going to enjoy it. Your dog's going to enjoy it. It's going to make them happier, easier to live with, and it will improve your relationship. So let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about my brain stop for a second. Well,
It's all right.
let's talk a bit about if you think this is a good path to go down. Let's talk about play, like different types of play that kind of fulfill different parts of the prey sequence. Because last week we talked
Yes.
about like the different breed groups and the predatory sequences that they have, like enhanced or depleted. So we could talk about play and like different games that kind of tick those different boxes.
Yeah, I'll break it down kind of like how I break it down to most of my clients. When I talk about play and play sequences, I don't really talk about it as like predatory sequences. I explain it more as a bunch of C's. So there's conflict, which is like tug games, things like that. There's two forms, what I consider two forms of celebration. Celebration is kind of, that dog who loves to have that toy in their mouth and or whatever it is, and they're like, look what I have, and they kind of
Mm-hmm.
like show it off. Or the other part of celebration is coming in and celebrating with you and like petting them and being like, hey, look what I got. Then there's conflict, celebration, there's consume, where the dog wants to take the toy and then just like rip it apart. So think about like those squeaky toys that you might give your dog and they just absolutely destroy them and you're like, I just spent $15 on that. No. There's that one. So consume is another one. And those are the I think that's five, right? So there's conflict, celebration, consume.
Chase.
Oh, and chase. Yeah, you're right. That's the other one. That's the main one. The conflict chase are the two that come up a lot. Chase, you'll get those dogs who just want to, like, you see the owner playing fetch with their dog in the field. And so they throw the ball, the dog goes after it, and then it stops moving and the dog doesn't do anything with it. And then you see the owner walk across the field to go pick up the ball and throw it for their dog again. That is the chase sequence.
Yeah.
So those are the five main ones that I usually talk to my clients about: chase, conflict, consume, celebration, and celebration.
Yeah. The only one that I would add in, because it's not really in there, is like seeking and scent games.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of breeds that like don't.
I work largely with terriers,
Yeah.
so we focus on chase, conflict, and celebration.
There's a lot of breeds that don't have a lot of the other prey sequence, but they generally have, hello, Carl, they generally have food drive and will enjoy at least the seeking for food and sniffing. So
Yes.
pretty much every dog is going to enjoy sniffing and seeking. And seeking can even be like doing clicker training and tricks. It kind of activates the same part of their brain.
Yes.
I like your breakdowns. I think that that's really nice and digestible. So
Thanks. I stole it from JJ.
Good.
Good.
I like stealing things. That's all I do. Uh, I can't think of a C for sniffing and seeking, so we'll have to think about that.
Yeah, we'll have to think about that. We can put together a little pamphlet maybe down the line, a little PDF of all the play sequences.
Why don't we start with the sniffing and seeking? Because that is not in the C's, and I don't want to forget. So sniffing and seeking, I love this category because, like I said, I think most every dog is going to have drive to do this. Even dogs that they don't really like chasing, they don't really like tug or conflict games. Most of them are going to want to eat, mostly, unless they're really spoiled. Some dogs do have low food drive, but when you kind of get them sort of involved in seeking and sniffing for their food, they actually tend to eat better. And my one employee, she has a very picky little palm, and if she feeds Lily out of puzzle toys, she eats a lot better than if you just put food in her bowl.
Yeah.
So it can actually increase food drive. So our seeking games could be hiding the toy if the dog likes the toy. Generally going to be scent based, so hiding a toy, hiding food for them to find. If you get into it, you can condition your dog on certain odors. So I do essential oils for scent work competition. And then I also started teaching something called lost item search, where we teach the dogs to find their owner's scent. And then by the end of class, you can show them any scent and they'll find it. They'll match it, which is really cool. And what I like about that for people doing nose work is it's very practical. You can teach your dogs to find coins, literally anything. It's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
And they love it. And it's very fulfilling for them. And what I like about scenting is it's easy to do at home. You don't have access to in-person classes. There's online resources.
Yes.
There's a lot of fancy equipment, and your dog's probably going to love it. And it really tires them out. And then
one of my favorite things to do on a rainy day, and Oregon winters, we start to focus more on those types of games to do indoors because of the weather. Yeah. Cooper's been taught to find my keys and bring them to me, and that's always kind of a fun one.
Nice. Yeah, I have a student who's done my lost item search, and she's amazing, and her dog is amazing, and she always credits me as her coach, but I'm like, I did not teach you this. She actually has taken it upon herself to start to help people find lost pets. So if they can keep an article of scent from the pet contained in a bag, she actually helped find a dog that was missing for a month.
Wow.
They tracked her down, they found her, and she actually caught her. Carl, I can't believe you did that. She snuck up on the dog and jumped on it and was like, I'm not letting you until they
bear hug.
So she's been doing that. She'll help find another dog recently by kind of finding the area he'd been in, which was really cool. So she's done that just kind of through doing the lost item search. The dog was taught to match scents. And then she was like, he just found my husband's really expensive sunglasses. So it does.
Nice.
Really cool. It's practical. It's fun to train. So yeah, I love doing scent work. The other category.
And scent work can be done with any breed, but this is a great focus for those scent hounds. Those scent hounds are going to thrive. This is their fulfillment of sniffing out. And you can just literally play a hide and go seek in your house and gradually make it more and more difficult. But your beagles and your red tick coonhounds, these are the dogs that this is going to be their genetic satisfaction.
Yeah, and the other dogs that really benefit from it are those really high energy, high drive dogs. If you have a hard time physically tiring them out, this is a really good thing to put into your repertoire.
Yeah, sending them into a seeking behavior is absolutely going to slow down those gears in their head. So again, it's an all breed thing. But if you're specifically, if we're talking about just genetic fulfillment, your hound dogs are gonna definitely, your scenting dogs are definitely gonna absolutely top tier on this.
And then the other area is clicker training and problem solving. And so the dogs that are really going to generally enjoy that are the ones that have high intelligence, high need to do problem solving, and generally a high desire to work with their people. So a lot of our working breeds and our herding breeds, sporting breeds are really going to enjoy that. And it's not to say that a more independent dog can't. They might enjoy it because it is more dog generated training. But it's a really good way, again, to kind of get that part of the brain engaged and to kind of work your dog mentally instead of physically.
Absolutely.
Okay, so your C's?
My C's?
What was the Yes, I can't remember them all. Chase, conflict, consume. Was there another one?
Mm-hmm.
Did I miss?
Consume and celebration.
Yeah.
I think, we should call this seeking. We'll put a pin in this, but maybe we call seeking circuiting, seeking and scenting circuiting,
Maybe.
like,
It's very good.
brain circuits. It works the brain. We'll put a pin in that. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit. I actually want to talk about consume for a second,
Yeah.
because I think this one is one that gets overlooked. And I know for me personally, I tried very hard with my dogs to have, okay, this toy you can't consume. This is our conflict toy. This is our conflict and chase toy. But I do set up very specific scenarios where my dog is allowed to consume. And I think this one does get overlooked because dogs do have an innate need to rip and tear and destroy, especially if they're in that terrier class. So some of the things that I actually do, and you'll be able to like push in on this a little bit too, but bully sticks, obviously, like I give my dogs, those kind of chews. Everybody knows about those. Your dog's going to love things like that. Another thing that I really like to do that isn't food related, that my dogs are really great at and love doing, destroying cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
I will literally, when I get my Amazon thing or I get that poster, roll tube, I take them out in the backyard and I give it to them. And it's like, as long as your dog isn't like swallowing copious, like, you got to know your dog, but they'll literally just take it and shred it.
Yeah.
My dog actually helps me break down boxes, as well as the plastic bubble things that come in those packages. He does not consume them, but he loves to pop them.
Oh my God, my dogs love that too. It's so.
They used to be afraid of it, and then I got him into like fight mode with it, and he was like, "Duh!" So now when they come out, he's like, "Well, I'm gonna beat those things up. Let me destroy it." And all he does is just like shakes and tears, and it's like it's fun. So cardboard boxes.
I think mine is like helping.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely turned more into helping, but in the beginning, it was like a bravery exercise.
Yeah. The difference between terriers and breeding breeds, right?
Yeah, exactly, right?
They're like functional. Yours are like, I can kill it.
Yeah, exactly. So things like that. So if you want like non-food related safe things, cardboard boxes are a great way. I will also sometimes just give random pieces of paper to Archer because he just loves to like, he'll take it and he'll kind of like just kind of chew at it and pull on it.
Right.
And then it's way cheaper than buying like a $25 Tuffy toy that he's going to destroy in 2 days. And then I also will just go buy cheap toys, like cheap toys, knowing that he's going to destroy them. Like, I'll go to the Dollar Tree and grab a cheap $1 5-quarter, stuffy whatever, and he can destroy it because it's 5 quarters. Who cares? So I do strongly believe in giving dogs safe outlets for that consume part of their brain.
You know what I do? And my dogs love this, is I actually buy the toys that have like the toys inside the toy. So instead of ripping the toys apart, they have to dig in and get the little toys out, and they'll pull out. And I have like, I don't know, 18 of them probably, because they're all cute. And I'm like, oh, I have to get this one now.
They're adorable.
Sometimes, just like in the morning, she goes to the toy box and she pulls them all out and pulls all the little toys out, and she just is so satisfied. And like my dogs,
that's awesome.
Rarely chew up their toys.
Cooper and Fiverr don't really destroy their toys. So Cooper, actually, I bought Cooper a bunch of those for Christmas last year, the toys inside the toys, and he absolutely goes gaga for them. But those toys only come out when I'm just hanging out with Cooper, and then they get put away.
Yeah.
Archer, his need to consume is so strong that I just really can't have that stuff around. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we get that a lot where people are like, oh, my dog is just going to destroy everything. And we're like, well, here's this big rubber tire toy for your dog to chew on, right? Or like, same thing. We're like, just give them a cardboard box. Like,
seriously, just give them a cardboard box.
Big, heavy-duty chew. Sorry, Dexter's bumping me. That's why it's...
You're okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I do all the same things. I do a lot of like chews for my dogs as well. So they really I do like dehydrated kneecaps or raw bones a lot. Like same thing, it's kind of not like pulling and shredding. There's another chew that we have that they really like, which is it's a cheek hide stick wrapped in esophagus. So they pull the esophagus off and then they have the stick to chew on.
Nice. Yeah. 2 of my dogs can pretty much have any kind of chews. Archer, my Amstaff whatever mix, he can't have anything but bully sticks, and the bully stick has to be in that bully stick locker thing because when he wants to consume food, he really wants to swallow the whole thing every single time. So I'm like, no unaliving of dogs. no pig's ears or anything. So I just don't have them in the house. Just bully sticks and the thick ones at that. So
Mur does not swallow the kneecaps.
nice.
Yeah, because he's the same way. Like if he has a 6-inch bully stick, it's just down the gullet.
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So consume is definitely a factor to think on, and it is way easier to accomplish than most people think. Where I am kind of thrive, the dogs that I thrive with, and most of the dogs that I work with are in the chase and conflict arena of those plays. My personal dog, Cooper, he prefers celebration, and we'll talk about that after. But conflict and chase, and I'm kind of lumping them together because they can go together. Get a lot of dogs who enjoy the chase, but then also enjoy the conflict. So my personal dogs and a lot of dogs that I work with like chase and like conflict, meaning we do a lot of flirt pole. Flirt pole is basically a stick with a rope with a toy on the end. It's like a giant, one of those cat toys. It's like a giant one of those for dogs.
Yeah.
And we can get all of the sequences of play for the most part in that flirt pole. But there's the chase and then the conflict, and we can let them chase, and then I can immediately go into conflict. Conflict is literally just tugging and letting them win, tugging again, letting them win, and then building your out or leave it or off or whatever word you want to use, drop it for that. So dogs like terriers and staffies and even some bulldogs and some sight hounds, border collies and labs and goldens all really thrive with chase and conflict.
Yeah, and some of them might like chase but not tug, so we'll talk about that because that's kind of where celebration sometimes comes in.
Yeah,
and like I definitely learned about that with my dogs, so we can talk about the differences in them when we get there. Yeah, I'll talk about chase a little bit. If that's okay, because I'm really into my herding dogs, and so a lot of herding dogs do like to tug as well, but not all of them. Like some of them are sensitive, and so they're really gonna see a lot of the like needing to like chase and control movement. So you brought up a lot of really good games. Herding dogs are also like they generally really want to work with their person, so they're gonna really love like agility or hoopers. I do find agility for me is hard because I don't have a lot of space. And like everybody always wants to do agility because they're like that's the only dog sport that there is. But
there's only agility. Agility is the only dog sport ever.
I got into disc, like I guess probably about 2 years ago, and I love it. And the reason that I love it is like I can just go to a park and practice. I don't need to have like my own yard. And I've found for me, it's easier for me to make progress, like kind of being self-taught and doing some lessons. And it's easy to practice. It's affordable to get into. You don't need big equipment. And it ticks a lot of those boxes for dogs that like to chase and control movement. They have to be thoughtful while they're doing it. So I do prefer it over like just throwing the ball because they're in that kind of visual chase. So this way they have to think because they have to track the frisbee more. And kind of like when you work with dogs for disc too, there's a lot of like thinking and arousal. So I really like that. They do get to like use their mouths when they're aroused in an appropriate way. So it's been really, really fun for me and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really satisfied with that. And like I started kind of trying to get a club going so that more people can do it with their dogs. Because a lot of
And are you specifically talking about freestyle disc where like the dogs are doing tricks for the disc? Or are you talking about?
I do that, but like most of my students just.
I just wanted clarification.
My students just do like toss and fetch style.
Toss and fetch,
Some of them are like kind of trying to incorporate some tricks, but it's really just kind of like, basic frisbee and like kind of just same thing as the ball, like not always just going long and hard, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to dial back because thinking about the ball made me think about this. One of the things I love to do with ball is actually throw the ball into like a wooded area so the dog has to scent out.
Yes.
I love that. And I saw a video actually of a field spaniel doing this. And you could just tell that the dog was just like living its genetic fulfillment to the max, right?
Oh, it's so much fun, especially when you understand how scent works.
Yeah.
When you don't get in there to help your dog and just watch them scent, and especially like if the wind is blowing, it's so cool to watch them track out, backtrack, and then retrack in and like do the zigzags. That's fun. I do that with Archer a lot, especially now that he has elbow dysplasia. I'll have him stay next to me and I'll just throw the ball and then I'll heel him away and then I send him so they lose his visual track and then he has to go find it with his nose, and it's so fun to watch him do it.
I do that with my dogs too, and it works their brain so much more, but they also have that kind of chasing fulfillment too, and it's a little bit
Yep.
easier on their bodies, I think. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yes.
I don't remember if we talked about that. And then
No, that's the cool thing about all these play sequences is that a lot of it does get combined. So I work, a lot of terriers, so we do a lot of chase and conflict. But you get a dog like Cooper, like your herding dogs that might be sensitive, or your retrievers, like golden retrievers, will do the chase too. But they're not necessarily super into like tugging. Some are, but most of them aren't because they have a soft mouth. They're meant for retrieving, so they want to come in and bring it to you and celebrate with you. Like, oh, look, I got the thing, I got the ball. So that's the really cool
horse that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, the play sequences and breaking them down into just singularities, the reality is most people are going to be using a combination of one or two or three of these things all at once. So
yeah, I don't think I have anything else for chase off the top of my head because you did a good job covering like chase and conflict games. Yeah, like mostly I wanted to bring up disc and agility. And agility is good for like also partnership, and so is disc because you're controlling the animal, you're controlling the prey, and you have to communicate with the dog, and you have to,
especially if you're getting into freestyle, because then as the human aspect of it, like you're almost forced to think about how to get your dog to perform for this object that has been put into a high arousal kind of situation. Don't think that really gets played into a lot for the average person with fetch. Most people are just like throw, retrieve, and it's just over and over and over. Personally, like disc as well, 5 does it, but on windy days, we'll just do what I call like structured fetch, which is, I'll make him do all the freestyle tricks, the weaves, the jumping over, all the stuff that he's been taught for access to get this, and the same with the flirt pole. I think all three of those things are really great ways of building a different relationship with your dog when their drives are activated, when their brain is a little cracked out.
I do have one more thing I want to talk about, and that is kind of more for like, I'm just thinking about dogs that are like kind of sticky stocky and they really have that like kind of want to control movement and push. So I really like teaching a little bit of basic try ball or push ball for dogs like that.
Nice.
Not talking about like taking the jolly ball or the egg and being like, go out in the yard and go crazy. Like actually teaching them.
That's what we do with the bulldogs. Like, go have fun.
Yeah.
Give yourself a concussion.
But with herding dogs, you're going to get obsessive behavior with that really, really, really fast. With like a bully breed, they're like less prone to that obsession, I think. But
no, they're still obsessed. They're just less likely to be concussed about it.
Right. So with the try ball, just like teaching the dogs to push the ball gives a lot of satisfaction for that genetic drive to kind of like control movement and control, and then you kind of teach them to walk up into pressure and push it. So I really like that. And then I was thinking about flirt pole too, like for stocky dogs. So like some of our collies and kelpies, you can get that like stalking, and then for the pointers and setters and stuff like that, they can kind of get that pointing and stalking in there. And what was the other one I was thinking? Oh yes, Kay Lawrence. She's a trainer from the UK. She has a really cool little game called, she calls it sheep balls, and it's great for border collies. They're going to be more in the like stalking, but like other kind of like more upright herding breeds really like it too, because it's kind of like the chase and the control and like controlling the escape of the prey. So with this, you have like a couple of balls, and like what the rules are basically is the dog is only allowed to go after the one that like is escaping from you. So if they're at your feet, the dog has to like back off and wait, and then when you kick one, they have to go and grab it and bring it back to you. So they really like it. It's like that kind of waiting and watching, and then they get to control the one that's trying to get away. So that's a really fun one.
That's a good one. Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with tri-ball and all of that, but I have some friends who want to get into it. But yeah, that's definitely one that kind of slipped my radar.
I've had really good results with just like teaching the dogs to push the ball, and that like involving a lot of like inter or household herding drive shite.
Yeah. There was one more thing I also wanted to bring up, just because I use flirt pole and even fetch a little bit on this, which is, get a little doggy jargon going on right now, but Premack principle. I love using things like flirt pole for building on a Premack principle. And basically what that is like, say that your dog really wants to chase squirrels. You allow them to do that behavior through like, you're like, okay, this time we're going to work on recall. And then the reward is to do the thing that you wanted to do. Right. So I love doing that with Flirt Pole to get it started, but it really does transfer over really well to things like squirrels and ducks and geese. And I know that from experience because for whatever reason, even though he's an Amstaff, Archer was obsessed with ducks and geese. And I wasn't sure at the time if he could swim because he's part bulldog.
Yeah.
She was like, no. So we worked really hard with the Flirt Pole to turn his recall into a leave it and then recall specifically for that particular scenario. And to this day, it still holds true. He will see a squirrel and I will go, Archer off, Archer heel. And he's never going to catch the squirrel. So if it's safe to do so, I'll go, okay, go get it. And then he'll go chase the squirrel up the tree if it's safe to do so. If it's not safe to do so, I just take him out of that situation or keep moving. But Premack principle, the idea of letting them go back to the reward that you're also simultaneously trying to keep them from. Simplest terms, I probably butchered that, but that is something that is we work really hard on. In fact, I have a client that we just did Flirt Pole, and she said that her recall off of squirrels was way better after applying Flirt Pole for fun.
Yeah, because I think you're working, like I like to describe it to people as like we're building ourselves into the picture of that kind of prey drive, right? So I've got a few dogs lately that are like really scent trackers. So I'm like having them like teach the dogs to find like an animal scented toy and like tracking animal scent and then like kind of building themselves into that picture and then building some control into that picture, right?
Yep.
If the dog starts going off on wildlife scent, the recall is going to be like a lot more likely.
100%.
Yeah.
Here's another Premack example that's a little outside of the box thinking. So Fiverr, when we first moved, my border jack, we first moved to Portland from the Bay Area, where we lived on 5 acres, and suddenly we were in an urban environment. Really wanted to get in disc, but he had no interest in disc. He only had interest in marking.
Mm-hmm.
So I used marking as the reward. If I got some engagement on the disc, whether it was tug or looking at it or whatever, like we started off really small. Any interaction with the disc, okay, go mark. And he could go pee on a bush. And then we'd go back to work and do a little bit more. Okay, go mark. So there's another example of like using Premack, like a life reward or some kind of reward that they really want to get a desired behavior.
Yeah, I love that.
And that one's weird because you wouldn't think of marking as a reward cycle, but the dog gets to choose. And that's he's an intact male dog suddenly pushed into an urban environment where there's a bunch of other dogs. So it was important to him. So we used it to our advantage.
Right. Well, I think we've covered that all pretty good.
Yeah.
If it sounds like a good plan to you, let's spend a few minutes talking about like realistic expectations and goals. And then I think we can wrap up for today.
I think that's a great idea. Lead the way.
Gosh, you're going to make me talk first. Okay. So we're talking about like realistic goals. I think it's really important to understand, and I touched on this earlier, that you're not going to train away like herding drive. You're not going to change a bully breed's desire to like kind of have that physical push contact play, right? And like sometimes with like those big powerful breeds, that can lead into dog aggression. And it's not so much that like they have a genetic predisposition to dog aggression. They have high prey drive and they like the conflict, and that can become.
They have a pre-existing genetic disposition to go from 0 to 100.
So another dog pushes that button, and then they're like, "Okay, it's on." Right?
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Good idea to me. Yeah.
Just like how some people have a really quick push button into conflict, right? You can have dogs too. So if you have a dog and you suspect it's a genetic influence, you're probably not going to be able to train that away either by, using rewards for alternate behaviors or by punishing it. So I think like understanding that you're going to need an outlet for that. So a game or some kind of sport that is going to give the dog that need. Like I know a lot of people who sort of struggle with those conflict and anger issues. Not the dogs, it's not an anger issue for dog, but they might go into like MMA or martial arts where it's like kind of structured conflict and it's safe.
Yes.
Kind of gives them an outlet for that and they kind of learn.
I use that analogy all the time. You've got a kid who's struggling in school, doesn't know how to like maintain their emotions. You put them in karate. It's not about learning how to kick and punch. It's learning about discipline through this art form of conflict.
An outlet for like that need to move your body and kind of that genetic predisposition. So I think that's really important, and just like understanding who your dog is and accepting them for that and working with it is really important. And I think that goes with like if you rescue a dog and you has an unknown or a mixed genetic background and that dog isn't what you expected, um, like maybe you were like, oh, I'm going to get a dog who's going to act just like my neighbor's golden retriever and they're going to love everyone and they're going to love other dogs. I'll never have to have them on a leash. And then you get a hound mix who, hates other dogs, struggles being out in public, is people selective and runs away, right? Like having that expectation of like all dogs are like my neighbor's perfect golden retriever, and then getting a dog with a different genetic background can be really hard. So
Yeah.
remembering that not all dogs are like that. In fact, most dogs are not social to every person and every dog. And then working with your dog how they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really, really important thing to like kind of be succinct on. Like I expect my dogs and I work with my dogs to meet me and this unusual, unnatural environment living in an urban, city. It's an unnatural thing. So I expect them to meet me at that point and learn how to function in that particular society. But it goes both ways. I also need to meet their needs and know, like, Cooper doesn't like to work. He doesn't like to be in competition. It's just who he is. He loves to do things. He loves to practice. But the minute it becomes pressure of any kind, he's out.
Yeah.
That includes, like, if I take him to do work with puppies or something, he will avoid it. He goes, nope, I know the scenario. I know the context. I do not want to work. So I don't make him work. We just do things for fun. I meet him there. Archer, like, has a lot of drive in him, but his body can't keep up. So we adjust as we need to. He's very dog neutral. He doesn't care about other dogs. And I don't put him with puppies because puppies don't have any idea of space. Like, I know who he is. Fiver is great with certain dogs, but he has a slow introduction period and he's not a dog park dog. And I also know that if I don't meet his needs genetically, i.e., he doesn't get a chance to use his brain and do something physical, usually both at the same time, he's going to start problems because that's who he is. And he needs a minimum of at least 20 minutes of high drive activity a day. And all of my dogs do not thrive with daily walks. They find them really boring, and so do I.
I have a couple more kind of closing thoughts, and one was kind of like to tag on to my last bit of like, please do your research on if you want to get a purebred dog, do your research on if that breed is going to fit into your lifestyle and like really do it. And don't just think, oh, I can handle that. If it's something that you don't think is a good fit for you, do not get that breed, right? Like look at what you want your dog to be. How's that dog going to fit into your lifestyle, and pick a breed that's going to fit those. Don't pick a dog because you like how it looks, right?
Yeah.
You're going to end up with a square peg in a round hole situation, and it's very difficult for everybody. And what you're going to have to do is meet that dog where they're at, and you're going to have it might be a good journey for you, and it might be a good spiritual and personal growth journey for you, but it's not what you wanted. And you're going to end up, potentially rehoming or in, a very conflict-ridden situation. So please do your research. Your dog
Absolutely.
breed. A lot of the time, it's an unknown breed mix. So just be ready because you could get anything, right?
Yeah, and I think on that point,
very good at detecting breeds phenotypically. So they might say it's a Shepherd Husky mix, and it could be neither of those breeds or those breeds plus 7 others. And you're just going to have what you have, right?
Yeah. I think to add to that point, I know this is hard. I know it's hard for me from time to time. Try to be honest with yourself too. If you're just a weekend warrior, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're like, man, I go hiking on the weekends, don't get a Malinois because they're not weekend warrior dogs. They're everyday dogs. Like, I'm a professional and I don't want a Malinois, So, like, try to be honest with your actual activity levels and what you are actually capable of committing to.
Yes.
All of my dogs do pretty well being weekend warriors, but we do a little bit of like conditioning and work throughout the week as well. But I also know that I am not a person who's going to get up at 6 a.m. just to start training my dog. I need dogs that have a tendency to be okay if they have a couple of days off, or I have a couple of off days, which is why I'm drawn to dogs like bulldogs and terriers, because when the off switch is off, it's off.
It's off.
And when it's on, they're like, it's time to party. So, and even then, I still had to make a lot of adjustments because Fiver is part border collie and was a busybody for the first 5 years of his life and never really truly settled. So I still had to I had to adjust my sort of life with him a little bit.
And then the other thing that I promised I was going to talk about, which is good to talk about here, is like, don't have set expectations of how your dog should like to play. A lot of people are like, my dog has to tug, and that's it. Well, guess what? Not all dogs are going to like tug. Right?
Yeah.
And I find that a lot with people, not as much pet people. Like pet people almost are like, oh, I can't do tug. It's dangerous. Do tug. It's good for your dog if they like it.
I've had that conversation so many times. It's not going to increase aggression. I promise.
There are a lot of people who are like into dog sports who think the dog has to tug because that's the only toy reward they have. You know what? Not all dogs are going to like tug. Figure out what part of play your dog likes, right? Are they into the conflict? Brew loves tug. Like that's his favorite part is the wrestle and the fight. And like if I let him win, he just drives it right back into me. There's absolutely no celebration. Dexter, he wants to celebrate, right? So I actually built up his tugging capability by letting him win and working with him on his little like happy laps, and he'd come in and like
Cooper was the same. Yeah.
He'll tug more with me. Quill also, she really likes to tug, but she's also really into chasing. So she's definitely got a little bit of different drives. And then Tina isn't really into any of that. She's more of a seek and consume type, and she likes a little bit of personal play. But she doesn't really tug. She doesn't, even though she has really high prey drive, she's like, this is not, I think it's too much pressure for her, honestly. And I flirt pull and everything, and she's just like, that's not a real animal, but she loves doing so.
Yeah. Same. Yeah, you just got to know your dog. Like, as much as Archer is a pit bull, strangely enough, he doesn't really like tugging that much with me specifically, which is hilarious to me. He loves tugging with other people, and he literally will, like, watch me, like, as he's tugging. He's like, I'm doing it. But with me, he doesn't really like to tug. He likes to consume and he likes to chase. So like chuck-it balls are great for consuming because he can just, squeeze down on that. And so we do a lot of that. Fiverr loves conflict. He loves chase and conflict. He'll chase and then he'll throw that tug right back into me.
Yeah.
Cooper, I built up his tug just like Dexter through celebration. He really loved the parading aspect of it. He loved to go out and just kind of prance about. And then because he's so much smaller, I really had to work on teaching him to come into my space by basically getting down on my knees and leaning back. And then I would just celebrate with him there, teaching him to bring it to me. And then we built it into tug. Still not his favorite, but he'll do it to get to the celebration part. So we spend more time in that celebration circle. So knowing what the different play cycles are is really, really helpful. And it's making me think I should put together a PDF on that. So I'll probably work on that.
That would be cool.
But yeah, so know your dog and adjust your expectations because they're not all gonna, fall into what you think they're gonna be.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think it's about time to wrap up. Good chat today.
I think so. Yeah.
Points about, I think for me the main takeaways is like do your research if you're getting a dog. I really like. I think be honest with yourself and like pick a breed or a dog that's really gonna fit your lifestyle. And then, work with your dog where they're at because they're all going to be individuals. And like, you might get the golden retriever who doesn't want to retreat. It's
not a race, enjoy your dog. There's nothing in the world that says that you have to meet a certain expectation with your dog at a certain time frame. Just enjoy your dog, get to know your dog, and be honest with yourself. I think those are great key takeaways. All right. How can they get in touch with you, Sarah?
Best way to find me is through my business, which is Barks and Recreation Pet Services in BC. We're on all the social media, and then our website is www.bnrbc.ca. Oh, it's Fiverr. I thought you were
This monster.
And how about you, Rebecca? Where can people find you?
I'm based in Portland, Oregon. I do offer online sessions as well. You can get all that information at dognamics.com, DOGNA as in Mary, ICS.com. All right, that'll do it. And we'll see you guys next time.